Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I am here. There's a flock of Canadian geese who are just yelling like crazy over there. And that's actually why I'm here, is to talk about those geese and the ducks that also live at this pond. You see, I come into this neighborhood pond near my house pretty often, and I see people doing this activity often, and I'll bet that you see it as well, and that is feeding the ducks and the geese. And in some ways, it's amazing, right? Feeding the ducks and geese can be so much fun. It can give someone this really close association with this wild animal, this beautiful, amazing animal. It's great, right? Except, while those things are all true, feeding ducks and geese brings along with it some other things that are also true. And they're not so fun, and that's what I want to talk about today. So you come out to your local pond, right? Nice little, maybe urban or rural pond not far from your house. There's a bunch of lovely standing water and ducks and geese floating around on that water. And if you bring some food with you, maybe some bread, for example, you could tear that bread up and throw it out to the animals, and those ducks and geese will swim on over and they will start eating that bread. The trouble is, that bread isn't super good for them. And even if you do find some food that's good for them, there's still some real downsides to feeding ducks and geese. So, to start off with, let's talk about bread. Bread is a really common thing for people who want to feed ducks and geese to bring. It's cheap, it's easy, it floats around the water pretty well. But the trouble is that things like bread or chips, crackers, cookies, they don't have a lot of great nutrients for a bird. Ducks and geese can't sustain themselves for long periods of time and stay healthy if a large portion of their diet is made up of bread. And so, this is where there's a little bit of nuance, because of course, if only one person comes to this pond and that one person only feeds just a little bit of bread out into the pond for the ducks and geese, then those ducks and geese, they'll be fine, no problem. But is that one person going to be the only person who lives around this pond? I mean, this pond right here behind me is set in a residential neighborhood. There are dozens of homes right around it, and then neighborhoods spreading out for blocks beyond that. So if everybody comes and brings bread, then you're starting to actually add a significant portion of the diet of these birds as just low nutritional value, quick burning carbohydrates, and not a lot more than that. And so ducks and geese can have real problems with this. If a duck eats a lot of bread for an extended period of time, they can become vitamin deficient. There can be growth defects, especially if this happens while the duck is young and still growing. It can pose very serious health consequences on the bird. So that's why, when you come to a place like this, don't feed them crackers. Don't feed them bread. Keep that stuff at home. Now you might think, okay, all right, won't feed them bread. Surely there are high nutrition foods that a duck would really value, that would be really good for a duck, that one could bring out to a pond, and you can still get that same experience of having a bird come close to you and get a really great look at it, have this sort of amazing interaction, and have the bird get something valuable out of it, right? And there are. You'd be right if you thought that. There are things like lettuce and cabbage that you can bring out and shred up and throw out there. There are lots of people who sell duck feed. You can buy it at feed stores, you can buy it at wild bird food stores. You can buy these things that are specifically formulated to have all the vitamins and minerals and nutrients that are really great for a duck. And so you could bring those. You think, hey, great. Some people talk about bringing things like frozen peas or frozen corn and scattering those out. So you could find these, high nutrient, high value food items and maybe bring those out. And while that does alleviate some of the issues with the nutrients and the diet and the health, the physical health of these birds, it still has another problem, and that is it affects their behavior. In particular, one of the most obvious ways this changes a bird's behavior is that when birds start seeing us humans as sources of food, they pretty much lose all fear of humans, and they can even start to get aggressive. They start to get pushy. They start to say, oh, as a human, that human has food, I want the food. And this can become a nuisance, to say the very least, and downright disturbing, especially for like young kids. If they have a big goose that's just like after them, chasing them around, demanding that they give them their food. And while the food that you might be bringing out, might be cabbage and lettuce and that kind of thing, it might be better for the geese, those behaviors are not going to be good for the humans. And honestly, if a flock of geese, for example, gets really aggressive towards people at a park over and over again, if this becomes a chronic problem, it's not going to be good for the geese either. The city officials are going to have to come in. They're going to have to maybe capture the geese and haul them off somewhere, take them to maybe a less desirable habitat. Maybe the geese come back, maybe this becomes a bigger problem, animal control gets involved, it becomes a nightmare, both for the humans and for the birds. So when you have these birds getting acclimatized to humans and seeing them as a food resource, it doesn't lead to anything good for the geese and the ducks in the long run. You can also have sort of more subtle effects on bird behavior. You can affect territory establishment, you can affect migratory behaviors. There are some other sort of larger ecological processes that can be disturbed if you regularly feed birds, if birds sort of see humans as a food source. So it's another reason, even if the food is high value, still don't feed the ducks. And there's actually even another reason, and that is that while you may scatter your frozen corn and frozen peas out into the water, while you may find really high value foods, or not, if you throw crackers and bread, this is another reason why crackers and bread are a bad idea. If you throw that food out, practically always, not all of it is going to get eaten. The ducks are going to find some of it, but they're going to miss some too. And that waste food becomes a real problem because it starts to attract other things. Things like maybe rats. Rats are pretty common. They'll find those sources of waste food, and while the ducks may not be eating it, the rats certainly will. And if the rats come in and start hanging out, when they run out of that waste food, they're going to start looking for other things to eat. And this can be leading to injuries of ducks. Rats will actually chew on the feet of ducks and geese. They certainly do that to chickens as well. Domestic chickens have a very big problem with this. Rats getting in and chewing the toes off of an otherwise live, healthy bird. Rats can definitely kill and eat baby goslings, and they absolutely will raid a nest and eat the eggs. So by having this food resource that's sort of above and beyond what the ducks are going to use, and encourages this population of, say, other pest species like rats, you are impacting those birds in a very negative way because of our human behavior of feeding the animals. So it's a third reason. You don't do it for nutritional reasons, especially when talking with bread. Don't feed the ducks for behavioral reasons, because regardless of what food you use, no matter how good it is for the birds, having them become more aggressive towards humans is not going to be good for anybody. And there's the sort of collateral damage reason of when you put food out into the environment and the ducks don't eat all of it, that waste attracts other organisms, which can then lead to a sort of rollover effect of bad effects, bad impacts on the birds themselves. So, next time you want to go to a duck pond, next time you want to go to your local waterway and there are ducks there and you want to hang out with them, you want to spend some time with them, tempting though I totally sympathize that it might be, to bring some crackers or bring some stale bread from home. Don't do it. Leave the bread at home, leave the crackers at home, leave the lettuce and cabbage and the frozen corn and the frozen peas, leave it at home. Bring a pair of binoculars. Bring a camera. Bring a sketchbook. Park yourself somewhere on the bank and sit quietly and let the ducks sort of acclimatize to you, not seeing you as a food resource, but just seeing you as a neutral part of the landscape. And you can still, yes, it takes a little more patience, but you can still get those amazing close encounters with a wild animal that you would get with food, except without all the negative impacts that bringing food into the equation creates. So a little something to think about, and maybe something to consider next time you go out birding. So I hope you learned something from it. I hope we all feed the ducks less. And until next time, thank you very much for the view, and enjoy the natural world.